Wait, can you see this? What are they?
Oh, they can get closer if you're gonna ask that.
Sorry, it's with your daughter. Some kind of lily.
That's no.
Oh, wait. Okay. I was sure they're not dates.
Yeah, wait, no.
They wrote them.
Those are. No, see, they're growing up on long stems. Those are easy.
So then that's tiger lily, right?
Just check with
Yeah.
Tiger lily, right? I think it was.
Oh, yeah. How are you? I'm good.
It's just like spider plants, things like that.
We also have like
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Actually, my backyard is the septic.
Nice.
So, well, they have to us. Oh, I am serious. Okay. I've had it planned out for so long.
Oh, yeah.
I have this
You're front row seat.
Well, I just wanted to tell you, I have to be someplace at 3, so don't take it personally if I.
Front row, please.
Well, no,
I saw you in did for the cancer run. That was great.
oh, on.
Well, our packet prep and all that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I should take a walk.
Yeah, we have been making it a Mother's Day tradition. My daughter comes down and with her kids. Her husband, usually that's his weekend to work, and so she comes down Friday night, stays overnight, we have supper together, we do a walk the next day.
It was a busy day for us because we had our son's graduation party. Basically, that's after 5 o'clock.
Oh my gosh, you put a lot into that day, huh?
Oh, it was so while we both took the week off, prepping for that. So.
Yeah.
But it's all good.
So,
yeah, it was good. Well, then family was in town for the walk, the run too. So.
Who was?
Oh, Gentina's sister.
Oh, yeah. I saw
It was a fairly big one.
Yeah, I saw that it was a big group. Yeah, we had a big group too, and I had my almost 15-year-old grandson is 6'4", so we had a not only a good sized group, but a big kid in it too. Yeah, I could always that picture they took from the ceiling or from the top. so I was looking to see if I could find us. Well, there's Desmond. He's up above the whole crowd because he's 6'4". So anyway.
Sure, we can get rolling. You got colleagues here.
It's gonna be outstanding.
I don't know, we'll see. I just literally finished it an hour. And it ain't done, so it's funny to show.
Thanks for coming. We'll kind of get started. Wayne has an amazing garden, I think. I love his garden. He was on our garden tour.
6 years ago, maybe?
Yeah, and he has kind of a unique way of doing things, and he has varieties that I didn't know existed. So it's kind of amazing. Hopefully he has lots of information for us. And I wanted to let everyone know that in June, on the 13th of June, Saturday, the Master Gardeners will have their garden tour, where I think a lot of you have been to it before, but we start at 8 o'clock in the morning at the Reformed Church on Burley Street, where you can get your ticket. And there'll be a number of gardens that you can tour. And it's always amazing. I'm always amazed at all these great gardens that we have in Yankton. And you never know that they're there when you drive down the street. So it's really fun to go, and gives you a chance to see what other people are doing in their yard and what's successful in Yankton, and I'm always amazed. And then we'll also have a plant sale at that time. So that's a not to be missed. And then next month, we are going to have from university, Amanda Bachman, who is the state insect person, is going to be doing a program on friends and foes in the garden. Now, it's not quite sure if she's going to be doing an afternoon and an evening, because she's going to be teaching another class here in Yankton. So we will let you know if there is an afternoon class, but there will definitely be an evening class that Amanda will do. So the afternoon one is still kind of shaky because of the other class that she's teaching in town. And it is a class for new master gardeners. So as I've told you, you know, become a master gardener, you take these classes, and then you do volunteers. And she is going to be teaching that class to them, and then she's going to come here and give us all the answers on insects. But today, we have Wayne and his amazing garden.
Well, we'll see. I know the folks were worried I was running late, but I have about 15 trays of starts out in front of my garage. I had to give them a quick douse with this hot wind out going on today. So today, basically Shan, when she asked me to do this, I've done a bean talk, which you can find on Yankton Seed Library. You'll see a smattering of beans on here, but that's an hour-long talk that really delves into the world, especially of dried beans, the history, genetics, you name it, where they came from. We did something with garden art last year. So I wanted to talk today about garden transformation. There's a little bit of play on words here, dormancy to bloom. I want you to think about within you, how you've grown it. Each of you have grown as a gardener, where you got your start. And then the play on words with year and years of transformation. You're gonna see my Yankton garden as it evolves through time, basically over a period of about a little more than a decade. I have pictures, and I feel like I'm showing fish pictures from days of old. But I hope you pick up some things along the way and themes along the way, but also how my style has transformed. And one of my neighbors one day came up to me and said, "Wayne, you know a lot about gardening. You're a master gardener, et cetera." And I said, to me, it's always about being willing to try new things, learn from them, whether it's different varieties, different techniques. And that's really a continuation of learning and literally pun intended, growing as a gardener throughout my lifetime. And so you're going to see a lot of that and hear a little bit about that today. But first of all, I want you each to think about, in dormancy, whether, be a seed or a bulb. but for each of us as, you know, when we were children, or maybe it was as an adult, you know, what's your first memory of a garden, or who first inspired you to garden? Where, you know, if you draw back, I have some thoughts I'll share, but if anyone wants to share that, I'm, you know, be so bold, we're jumping up, I'll call on people. Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead.
My first memory probably of a garden was when my mother gardened, and it was always a mess of weeds. So then when I got married in '83, my mother, you know, it's kind of a standard. If you marry a Nath, you are going to be gardening and you are going to be canning. That's how I felt. I don't really know if that was true or not. So my first garden, we got married in June, so we planted it after we got back from our honeymoon. And I remember I had eggplant and potatoes. Well, I had other things, but those two things, they had the potato bugs on them. So, yeah, but you know, I've had a decent garden. Yeah, and I've done a lot of canning in my younger years when we had a family, but yeah.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Yeah.
One year I planted 80 tomato plants.
No, yeah, that's
But
cool.
I gave a lot of tomatoes away.
Yeah, it's a little bit crazy. Yeah,
So my husband made me cut back, so it was 40, and then now it's about 20.
that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead in the back there.
Picking green beans in my grandfather's garden.
Oh, I love that.
Very young.
Where was that? Where was your grandfather live?
That was Lincoln, Nebraska.
Oh, lovely.
So I was born in Lincoln too, and he lived on the acreage, and we lived about, it seemed like 2 miles from him, but it was about 1,200 feet. But as a child, it was a long
Yeah, no, that takes me back too. I love it. Anyone else want to share?
I'll say something.
Sure.
You know, everyone grew up with grandparents gardening and parents gardening, and I did not have that experience at all. But I remember going to the neighbor's yard and seeing bleeding hearts there. And it was like, oh my, that's just magical. It just is a magical thing, the way that it looks. And then when my kids were toddlers, little kids, and I had to be outside with them, and I was sitting there, and it was like, well, I might as well be doing something. So I started digging in the dirt, and I kind of haven't quit yet.
Yeah, I love that. Well, thanks. Yeah, thanks for sharing this. For me, you know, I love hearing about the grandfather because I distinctly remember I grew up around north of Wagner, South Dakota, and going to my grandmother's garden and see, you know, I don't even know if there were strawberries in the grocery stores back in the early 70s, but, you know, picking strawberries out of her garden, or some chives still in my garden from my great aunt Leona Roman from Wagner, South Dakota. But another first memory for me was, anybody recognize that cover? Yeah, from Yankton. I have an image I found one time of how Gurney's is the center of the garden universe. It has bullseyes going out for delivery dates from Yankton, South Dakota. So to me, having Gurney's in Yankton, an hour away, where, you know, not only could you look at the catalog, and it was kind of like a Christmas catalog for me, but to be able to walk into where the elves did their work in Gurney's, lots of good memories there. And you know, so one of the things I found this page here online, but how many of you, any of you remember the 1-cent seed packets? They were sitting on the counter past this. Yeah, and so for me, that, as far as gardening, that's what I started with back on the farm. Was I got my own row in the multiple rows of the farm's garden, but it was the 1-cent seed packet. So that, and the people that started me on that path. So that goes back to the early 1970s.
Did you really have to pay a penny for them?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was funny. Yeah.
Wayne, do you remember what you grew out of that seed packet?
I remember there were beets in there and peas.
I remember green beans.
Yeah.
We
I
had
mean-
some flower seeds.
Yeah. Oh, there were marigolds for sure. I can still remember seeing those. Yeah. Yeah, I saw it online. You could actually get a packet that's unsealed. Probably the germination rate would be great, but yeah. Anyway, so the other piece, you know, I'm going to talk about is then years of transformation, but I pulled this image from a Farmer's Almanac website about, you know, this is organization of garden. there are some rows in my garden now, but there are very few. And, I'm not opposed to an organized, garden, but when I think about organization, I really look for, now in my garden at home, I look for, how can I grow lots of things, get marigolds next to tomatoes or zucchinis, but also, where are my poppies going, zinnias on every point. You're gonna see some of the beds here, but, if you're starting out, rows is a great thing. I still remember doing drop lines and, but, eventually shifting, as you'll see here in a bit, to lots of raised beds. So, when I think about, so I also, I love this quote from Bunny Mellon, a garden hovering always in a state of becoming sums its own past and its future. And so as I was going through this, I was doing things chronologically by months and years and, some of my gardens, but really thinking about where basically how my garden has evolved, and hopefully, as we all grow as gardeners, they also evolve. So one of the things, I think I missed it. Anyway, one of the things I wanted to ask folks is, when for you if you think about the garden year, when does it start?
Depends on what state you live in.
Well, okay, so what you're saying is frost free?
Ours, actually, I'm from Wisconsin, and my mom always told me never plant before Memorial Day.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially.
Whenever my husband can't stand it anymore.
So that's when the garden year starts? So which would be what month, Angie?
Boy, he starts thinking the potatoes have to go in on Good Friday and,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, yeah. No, yeah, so I'll jump to that. So here, people think, well, this is the dormant phase of the garden, but actually, and so this is what my garden, I forget what year this is here, but what I call, basically sitting there. And you see, one of the things you'll note is there are a lot of structures in the garden too. So I've shifted from just, growing on a flat surface to also growing vertical as well. This is what I call the canvas. So now you can see the shift to raised beds. And in 2022, using things like willow wattling, silver maple I cut down, that was shading my garden. I did that on my birthday, so because it was shading my garden. I did not ask for permission, but so utilizing some of those limbs to build structures into the garden. You can see that transformation over time. Basically, I'll flip back here one. Basically what would be the start of the year by June 7. Now we're, as you all know, really moving into it by June 26th, and then a month later, it's a pretty dense jungle, if you will, at times. So yeah, here's where I was going to ask about the question. So, I heard basically when it's frost free. And I always like to think, well, when is the first thing I put in the garden? And actually, for me, I always say kind of like life in the circle is, it really doesn't end, because as you're going to see here over the period of months. For me, the garden year, I always say, starts in October, because that's when I put in my garlic cloves. I save about 10, 11 varieties of garlic, and they go in the ground in October. So what I'm going to do next is basically go month by month, and I don't have photos from every year, but you're going to see. Go ahead, Robin.
Can I have a fact or faux? Do you have to buy garlic from a seed place, or can you use garlic that you purchase?
So a good question there. I've bought some potatoes from like an organic market, and they've grown well, but I think they do put things to inhibit growth on. I'm not sure on this. I could check on this, but I have tried that from the store at about 50%, 40% of the production, because I do think they put something on it to inhibit growth. I know that happens with spuds as well. So, yeah.
So why do they sprout? Potatoes sprout?
Oh, they still sprout, but it slows it, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, or
Yeah.
garlic, if you buy garlic.
And garlic from the store will sprout. But one of the things, well, since we're talking about garlic real quick, I'll just say, when I'm sorting off, I harvest garlic in July, as you'll see. I save 10, 11 varieties down in my cold, dark basement, label them, hang them. And so garlic can be expensive. So I haven't bought garlic for 5, 10 years now. So somewhere in there. So that's the garlic. So now we're going to go back as far as 2014. But again, October, the reason I say it doesn't start and it doesn't end, I'm still harvesting at least in October. Carrot coming out in October. One of the, looking at leeks. Leeks are still in the garden in October. You can be harvesting them throughout the summer, obviously. I won't talk about varieties, otherwise it's going to take too long. But if you have questions about certain varieties, things I'm growing. One of the things I will mention here, my son here, October of 17, that looks like a hot pepper. It's actually a habanada or an arroz con pollo. They basically have all the flavors of like a habanero without any capsaicin. So basically 0 capsaicin. So a tremendous habanero flavor. One of the things, I'll give you a secret to one of my chili recipes, basically put those in an oven at 170, let them dehydrate, grind them up, and makes one of the finest chili powders you ever find. The other thing that a lot of people harvest in October, I don't have a picture of this, but if you look into old Gurney's catalog, you see Dill's Atlantic Giants. You'll see some pictures of when I purchased the seeds from the original Howard Dill has passed on. He started these varieties, but at the farm, I've grown several 500-pound pumpkins. So that part of the fun, have a whole presentation on the different pumpkins and the carving. But that's something that, especially when the kids were young, lots of pumpkin carving going on. And then lots of varieties of peppers. Here you're seeing different varieties that are different combinations that are going to go into hot sauce. So whether I'm drying them or turning them into hot sauce. So now we're at October of 18, Clay's getting old. We're still in October, but different years started making different, what I call Mill River Magma hot sauces. And then for me, bean harvest really can take anywhere, but throughout the year now, I didn't grow a lot of dried beans in the past. I now have about 70, 80 varieties I've collected. I actually traded this spring with a lady who lives on an island in the Baltic Sea from Sweden this year. We send beans back and forth, and I gave her some of these varieties you see here. But this in 2018 was when I first started. So this was my first series of varieties of dried beans. But again, a whole bean talk out there on the seed library. Folks want to see that. Here you see, I talked about vertical gardening. Sometimes I'm putting up the structures, but one of the great structures for growing vertical, people think about it as cane, but this is a variety of broom corn. So if you think about the old straw brooms, before that would go to seed, that has the straw, but an excellent structure for growing beans. This is a variety of Bohemian beans. To my heritage, it's called Kresnitjevic, but it's from Bohemia. You do see some variants in some of the beans, not always true, but so I was seeing 3 variants. I've actually tried to propagate some of those to see if they hold color, and they have pretty well, but obviously with the beans, lots of color and varieties there. Another thing, tried a lot of different corns. I always struggle with the one in blue. It's a paja suiga corn. Actually ground some of that, made flour and tortillas out of it. And then another, I think this is a Cherokee variety called Glass Gem. That's actually a popcorn that I've popped before, but they're just stunning. When you're growing those, it's really, there'll be 3 or 4 years on a lot of the stalks. Sometimes grow pretty tall, 8, 9 feet tall. And it's kind of like opening a little present to see what you're going to get as far as the glass gem sweet corns. And of course, over the years, I've grown lots of heirloom pumpkins and squashes. Some may recognize lots of different carrots, but always, again, looking for some of the presentation potential. I can't remember the exact variety of the black one there, but yeah, several different varieties and just showing the different colors and whatnot in the garden.
Wayne?
Yes.
Does the black one stay black? when you cook it?
It does fairly well, yeah, because there's a lot of pigment in there. It'd be great actually for dyeing wool, because it just, yeah, there's I think, I want to say it's a black nebula, I think, out of Baker Creek, so here promoting, but that's one of the places I get a lot of seeds. So again, although it starts in October, the garden season doesn't really end. I mean, the kids we were harvesting leeks. I think those are French Bleu de Soleil, so really pretty blue color in November of 2011. One of the things you can grow in South Dakota in pots, I keep this year to year. I kept them indoors. You see ginger and turmeric over here. Really a beautiful leafy tropical plant, and especially the ginger. It's fun when people come over, rub these leaves because it is intense smell of ginger. But this went into a jelly, ahi, char, pita peppers, and lemon drops, and then different pepper ferments here from fairly mild to this one here was as hot as it gets. A lot of apocalypse scorpions and Carolina Reapers in that batch. So that was more of a novelty thing, not for taste. And so now we're at November of 2020. Again, one of the things I harvested. So one of the things you saw was in 18 when I started collecting beans. By 2 years later, this was the suite of varieties I have. I mean, still not at that 70, 80, but I've cataloged all of them. Now what I have to do in my garden is I try and grow about 20, 30 varieties a year to keep the rotation going and keep the viability of those seeds up. But lots of good varieties. And people often ask, do they taste different? For most of the part, if you put a ham hock in, it's going to taste like a ham hock. But but there are some differences in consistency and the way they hold shape. So, but obviously, one of the things I'm looking for is not just the flavor, but also the varieties of color. I mean, absolutely, and this isn't touched up at all. I mean, all the way from these bird's eye blue up in the, far upper right corner to the Uganda, those purple Uganda Bantus, you name it. There's king zebras all the way from China. By the way, all beans originated except for cowpeas, originated in Mesoamerica, so basically Central America and Northern South America. So when you hear like coming from Bohemia, I mean, it's post-European discovery and trading, et cetera, that a lot of those beans get transplanted. But what's really neat about any of these heirloom varieties, whether it be tomatoes, beans, the corns, there's oftentimes a story tied with them for whether it's a yellow variety here in the center of the Zuni Shilako. It's about a ceremony that the Zunis have to welcome spring after a long, hard winter, and blessing each other with kindness. So lots of neat stories tied in with beans. But the harvest doesn't stop in November, does it? Because you can be pulling, if you ever grown parsnips. I mean, it's great to pull some winter crops out. I mean, this was December of 2012, pulling the parsnips out. You're going to see some fun pictures of the kids later. I obviously use them for a lot of photo ops, but December of the leeks come in, and I think these are some giant musselburgs. There's some blue ones underneath there, but the leeks, I mean, obviously a great crop, but also something nice to be harvesting late in the year. A lot of times I'll mound up leaves as we're raking them on there, so I can do this. They can handle down to at least 20 degrees, Fahrenheit before they even start. You might have a little bit of frost on the outer edge, but they can handle a lot of cold temperatures. So, I put this on here because on my post I said parsnips for Christmas. You got a question back there? Oh, just stretch.
Yeah, I was getting home. Yeah, I guess I was stressed. I was asking him how big those were.
Oh, those leeks?
Yeah.
Oh, the eating part of them is basically up to, the white part, but those leeks, I mean, that eating part on some of those was this long. And one of the things with leeks, if you want to get more white, just keep mounding dirt on them as they grow, or even mulch to keep, build that white part up. So
those were pretty large things.
What's that?
Those were pretty large.
Oh, yeah, they're large. Yeah.
I was asking him, I was like, is that a really young girl or are they just that?
No, she's probably 8 years old. 2013. She was 10 years old at the time. So yeah.
Not real little.
Yeah. So yeah, she was starting to grow up. Yeah. And then more hot sauce. This obviously during the COVID timeframe. This was a pretty hot one. It'll blister your brain, and don't forget TP. So yeah, this was it's always fun to have something that burns from the start to the end of 2020. Yeah, playing with. So again, like I said, that for me the garden season starts in October, but one of the things I was going to mention the graciousness and patience. Angie, I'm glad you mentioned about your husband. For me, it's about my wife putting up with this. I try and not let her see these types of things happening when the seed order arrives. But one of the things I've started doing is saving a lot of seeds. I mean, obviously the bean seeds, flower seeds, but some things like onions and leeks, while they are, I could save them over time, but it just does. When you want to try a lot of things, I end up purchasing a lot of seeds. I mentioned the bean seeds from Sweden. This was when I was really starting to get into it. A gentleman out of the Chicago area named Russell Crowe, not from the Gladiator, but he has a bean collector site. And, so I picked up a lot of different varieties from him. And some of these don't do well. The yellow one there in the center, I was excited about that, looking for that color, but it's native to, I think it's a Friesland, basically out of the Netherlands in a fairly mesic, forested type climate. So didn't do real well. One of the things I don't have a picture of today, but for those growing flowers I talked about when we were doing garden, you'll see in the center of the seed packets there a buckwheat. If you're growing flowers, buckwheat's not too invasive, but comes back, volunteers every year. A great bouquet piece, because it's something that once it starts blooming in June, July, up until frost, as a filler and little cute pink flowers throughout the time. I've often wanted to save the seeds from that to see if I can make buckwheat, but they are hard to try and harvest off that variety at least. And then we get into, out of the January timeframe, pull out the old John Deere tractor and start planting. But, so it's the leeks going in, there you do see some of the varieties that I'm growing, the Isla Craigs, kind of like a Walla Walla sweet, but the two varieties of leek. But this is how I used to start all my leeks. Generally in that first part of leeks and onions, generally in that first part of February. I don't start leeks and onions indoors anymore. You'll see a winter sowing of them now, and when we get to the April side. But here you see the onions first popping up. I like putting this picture of tomatoes out there. I don't know how many varieties of tomatoes I've tried over the year, probably 70 or 80. But it was interesting looking at this picture from 2017. Some of my favorites are still on there that will always be in my garden. Aunt Ruby's German Green, Black Prince. If you ever heard of Black Crim, to me, Black Prince takes it up a notch. Kellogg's Breakfast, I'll show you a picture of an 8 days harvest off of one plant here in a bit. And then I lots of cherry tomatoes I've tried, but the Sun Gold Select is still one of my favorite. I still do grow some of these other ones here, like the Sirkovich, Yugoslavian, but generally about 15, 20 varieties of tomatoes in a year. Kellogg's, San Marzanos for sauces, etc. Are some of the main ones. And then as we get into March, a bank lights down in the basement. You see there, here we have peppers coming up. So you see Apocalypse, yellow 7-pot, which is basically meant to flavor 7 pots because it is that hot. The other thing you see with the onions too, when I'd be growing them in trays, is basically giving them haircuts probably once every week, week and a half, because they will start extending out. So these trays of onions or leeks have had a haircut already when we get to that March time frame. I mentioned the garlic going in October. Well, this is generally what you see in the upper left there is what it looks like come April. Right now it's probably a foot tall or so. This is leeks getting planted out in April of 17. And then I mentioned Dill's Atlantic Giants. What was fun about this is a packet of seeds. So hopefully we can get them shipped again. I think this past year, because of some of the trade issues, they weren't able to ship Dill's Atlantic Giants because they're coming from Windsor, Nova Scotia. But Howard Dill, again, had contact with Gurney Seed because he sold them through Gurney's, and they started to know who I was, and we talked back and forth, and they recognized the last name Stastney because there's Czechoslovakian hockey players that came over to play for Quebec's team and stuff like that. So, but at any rate, they'd sent me some of the pieces of it, like old Gurney's letters that they had and things like that. So some memorabilia from that time frame. But I would get, if you look on here, that the seeds are coming from I think that's a 925 pound pumpkin, or if you pay a little extra, you can get them from 1,500 pound pumpkins. But generally they're pumpkins. If you're getting seeds from Howard Dill's, they're going to grow well. But here you can see a lot of the, looks like, peppers coming up inside, onions, leeks, etc. in that April time frame. So one of the things you see in this picture here that I wanted to capture was, again, that transformation, that evolution. Here you don't see the structures. I used to till my garden every year, and I do not till any. I haven't tilled for 4 or 5 years now, in part because I have the raised beds, but as you learn about soil structure, the microbes and soil consistency, you learn the value of having, basically not tilling. And even with this, I started to trench in that, so I was spending a lot of time with a sand shovel, starting to raise beds. A fun little thing I tried back in April of 2020, worked well, but it's a little bit of work, was growing mushrooms indoors. So you can get some of those grow packets. I think this was out of the farmer's market in Sioux Falls. But just a side note there. Still more from April 2020. The plants coming in, and then we move into the May time frame where we're at now. I was out last because that little boy graduated or is graduating on ceremony Sunday or Saturday. I can't remember. Thanks for that. I know we had his party this last Saturday night. So but anyway, that's from 15 years ago, him out watering. One of the things you're seeing in there too is early May, we're past needing to do it now, but I like to use a lot of, there's the walls of water, which can really help with, retention of heat. And I do use hot hats for a lot of my tomatoes and peppers. If I want to get them out early, I just didn't have time this year to do that. But you really do get a good push on basically getting your tomatoes rooted down. I've grown them I have some pictures I didn't find for this presentation, but side by side with and without a hot hat. And it's amazing the difference in growth, and just a lot of it's too is root development too. So that is a little piece you can take away from that photo besides that young man. This was May 3rd of 2017. Anybody remember that snowstorm? Oh yeah, I see some head nods. Yeah, but things like garlic, it's not going to phase it. It's a wet snow and it's good moisture, which, I don't think we want to snow now, but certainly the moisture and the nitrogen. I think I might have showed this. No, I don't know I don't think I showed this picture. So yeah, I was trying to pull in some, because I got through 2020 through some of my albums. So I wanted to show you where things are at now. Even if things are transforming from this, maybe by tonight I'll have it in there, but right now, these 4 beds, because I had some extra time last fall, I basically have a rye cover crop on winter red rye covering 5 or 6 of these beds yet. But here you can see some additional willow wattling, shifted from that old silver maple that I cut down on my birthday to cattle arches. Still have in the back area, this is old cord cribbing from the farm, but that was a secret area I used for the garden, kind of in a spiral fashion, but also another a great way to get some vertical height in the garden. But the other piece that you can see, these beds are not uniform, not conducive to rows, but what they are conducive to is every little point as you're walking by, a different view shed, a different type of zinnia, a lot of poppies now on a lot of these beds. But and they don't take up all the space, but certainly it brings in a lot of, I want it to be pleasing to the eye, palate, and you name it. So. Yeah, this was May of 2 years ago, what it looked like from the backside. So there's a bunch of willow wattling. It looks, I like the willow wattling, but I'm still, so 2-3 years out now. These beds are still functional, but by next year, I don't think the willow wattle will be holding up. So, yeah. And I mentioned I used to start all my onions and leeks inside. Now, simply as long as I have these in the milk jugs. How many of you know about winter sowing? Got a few, yeah, good, a few folks. But basically, put soil in a half, cut the milk jug in half, put soil in there. I use a number 2 pencil, mark off my rows in my milk jug and put 1 or 2 seeds per hole. And a great way, and other than unless you have a serious dry spell, take that shut in early March and don't open it up till you're ready to plant. Sometimes April, so late April, first week of May, but great. I trim those onions off or any leeks I take out of these, as I open it, but just great vigor. I mean, probably twice as thick as what I was getting out of trays. So, and then when we get into June, now we're starting to get into harvest time. So here you're looking at a lot of onions, some of the leeks, carrots. A great way to utilize sugar snap peas. I pickle them in basically a cold pickle and vinegar. One of the things you're starting to see now, if you're watching the years go by, 2017, I'm starting to use more vertical structure. I did not use that a lot initially. I mentioned the Kresnojevic bean out of Bohemia. That's it there. The photo does it some justice, but it's just absolutely amazing. Bright purple variety. The Mbambo, basically that's an African bean again, started in Mesoamerica, but another variety tied to some of their stories of origin in Central Africa as well. So a neat story behind that. I do like, again, not just heirloom seeds. I still have, I mentioned my great aunt Leona Roman. I have chives from her growing in my garden yet. These are irises from my wife's grandmother from Alliance, Nebraska that we still have. She passed away probably 25 years ago, but it's nice to carry on some of those heirlooms, especially the family pieces. Some of the other things I've tried, one of the things I didn't think of was how magnificent bean, well, this is in this case, it's a variety of a chickpea, but how beautiful some of those blossoms could be when you look at them up close. So this is a nice look at Wayne still tilling his garden, going through the sand shovel, and then making paths and beds. So this was the start. What you see in May of 2020 was basically that beginning of the shift to raised beds, 2 permanent paths, 2 permanent beds. That might have been the last year I tilled there. And then what that looks like come a month and a half later. Lots of fun. I mentioned the corn cribbing. I used to have, I still do have the corn cribbing, but it's not the secret garden area. Some of the neighbor kids still think so too, but in a spiral fashion, but lots of fun places for kids to hide, whether it's growing beans up in there or I think in some of these years it was birdhouse gourds. My daughter Leona picking sugar snaps. You're gonna see a photo of that later. It's kind of fun to capture up my transformation as a garden, but also the transformation of the children as time has gone on with that. And again, the photo ops, the energy was still there back in 2013 to take these pictures with Dad. Hadn't had to shift, but different varieties. Obviously the flat Dutch cabbage still make a lot of. I used the crop cutter that was in our storeroom at the farm. That still has my dad's name written on it, Joe Stastney Jr. So yeah, the picture of her picking beans and quite a few years ago, then in July of 2000, sugar snap peas, July of 2015. Mentioned the garlic harvest coming in July. That's what it looks like lots of times. Definitely no vampires at our house that time of year. So yeah, and the kids playing the garden. Here you see okra coming up. I know there's hot peppers surrounding it, but and then here's where you see really getting the vertical piece of it. I do a lot of work with heirloom tomatoes, and so they are indeterminate, meaning they'll keep growing throughout the season. So I just use 8-foot 1x2s, and then first I start with a tomato cage, but then have them V'ing out, and they will well overtop that almost. You can make arches out of them, but 8-9 feet tall before the summer's over, because this is July of 17. More from the garlic harvest, obviously, tied in, not just the July, not just the harvest, but then also how I'm storing it with the braiding of the garlic. Generally, there's two varieties, there's lots of varieties of garlic, but hard necks and soft necks, usually you want soft necks for that. Soft necks don't get quite as big, they do keep longer, but if you work with the hard necks, you can get those to braid as well. The big pumpkin, so this is July of 2018. You saw, because of the year started in October for me, you saw what the end products looks like. Robin was mentioning Job's Tears. You'll see, what I do with that at the end of the presentation here, but the Job's Tears, it's an ancient grain, probably about 3 foot tall. And basically, you can eat it, but it's also, I use it for beading, for whether it's bracelets, necklaces, or rosaries in the case you'll see here shortly. July of 18, still fairly flat beds, but you can see the different parts of the garden. Just the vertical structures, the pathways through there. Yeah, I like this picture here because this goes back, probably a span of at least 10 years with my daughter with sugar snap peas. So, and believe it or not, she's living in Rochester now. She was home for Mother's Day and for the graduation this weekend. She said, "Dad, can I have some tomato plants and some seeds to take back with me?" I was like, yeah, she's got a little plot, her first plot of gardening. She actually said to me, "I wish I would have spent more time listening to you or working with you." But I'll coach you through it. So then I talk about the vertical garden. So this is actually getting into that secret space. But one of the things I like about these photos here is basically that wall of beans. So I noted if we go back a slide, oops, I went forward. So these sugar snaps are growing on that corn curbing. So my sugar snap peas, my climbing peas are now about 6 inches tall. I'm about ready to be just outside of them. You can talk about successional planting. Sometimes I plant whether it's any type of pole bean that I have, I'll plant that just outside of them, because then as the sugar snaps start to wane come this time of July, basically these beans are overtopping them, and then I'm harvesting the dried beans in October, November time frame as the frost hits them. But it does become just a wall, a really kind of neat green wall. One of the things with garlic, here's a lesson for you. How many of you know about garlic scapes? A couple of folks. So what you're seeing, generally, the soft necks can get them, but especially the hard necks. You see, I gotta make sure I'm on this thing. So you see this one here. I always try and pull these off when they start showing up. They actually are good to eat. I did see a tool to actually harvest them further down into the stem without ruining the leaf sheath, because you want your leaf sheath there. But the reason I took this photo, I missed pulling that garlic scape off, because guess what that garlic scape's doing? You can see down at the bottom, it's making the flour for the seeds. And so where is the energy going? But then look back to the bulb, about half the size of the bulb. So by harvesting those garlic scapes off the top, when they first start appearing, you prevent those flower heads from developing. Energy goes to the bulb instead. And the old puppy dog, we're now at 2020 in July. Couldn't get the kids to take a picture of the garlic, so hey, sparkles. So, anyway,
Wayne?
yes.
What all do you use the garlic scapes for?
I like sauteing them, like with scrambled eggs. I've made pesto with them. I have they seem to, once you start cooking with them, it's a real rich garlic flavor. So yeah, I've dried them before and made a garlic powder. Yeah. So I think, there are actually pickled. I forget if I ever have, but I think I might have pickled. I did pickle them once. But yeah, they're good. But especially if you can pull them straight up, you're not hurting this leaf sheath. And as you get further down in there, the white part is it's nice and tender. As you get further out, it gets a little bit tougher, but dice it up and saute it lightly. And yeah, use it to flavor anything you do with garlic, really. But,
So you cook all of it, like that green stem and the bulb?
So as I pull that out, normally I'd only want this about where you start seeing it curve at the top, that's when I'd be pulling it. You don't want it getting this far. This is way past due. So usually if you start seeing them above the leaf sheath about that long, then you want to, I try and pull straight up because then you get down in there more where it's more tender. But yeah. So, oh yeah, we got about 15 minutes. So I think we're getting, we're in July. Yeah, we only got to do to October. Still, as I mentioned, the kraut better, make a lot of kraut. You can see the difference in just 4 days of fermenting. But kraut's so easy to make bean based. The key is I think it's 2.5% kosher salt to, so for 1,000 grams of kraut, 2.5 grams of salt, kosher salt, not iodized, but just mash that together, pound it into fermenting jars, put some weight on it. Great flavor.
Where do you put the jars themselves then?
I like leaving them on the kitchen counter so I can watch, and then my wife, and she moves them downstairs. And you have to watch, because if you're out, here you're seeing these are fermented vacuum sealed jars. They will start bubbling up, but geez, that juice is good too coming out of there. They end up downstairs usually by that, And I've kept them, like the old Crocs that people used to put lid on, for 4 months. For many months, without putting them in the fridge. Or over, maybe after 3-4 months, I'll put them in the fridge out in the garage or whatever. But great, for cooking with or whatever, raw. Some of the varieties of onions, one of the wall is a good one. One of the things to look for in this part of the country, if you're buying onion seeds and starting them, do not buy the short day onions are meant for places like Texas, Georgia. So you see the sweet Georgia onions sometimes at the store, the plants. Look for things like the wall. These are Islip Craigs and Global, both long day onions. I'm going to go through a couple slides really quick here because, if you garden, not only do you want to look at it, you want to eat too. So we've hosted some garden dinners before, the caprese salads. This is in the secret area. That's a long-handled dipper gourd. Looking at this variety, so these are some of the varieties of tomatoes that probably only grow about 4 or 5 of what's on that shelf there, but lots of different tries. My son, I will say this, I came across his photos as I was putting this together. He's showing a friend how to eat a nasturtium, which if you ever tried them, they're real peppery flavor, great on salads, dress it up too, but I think about where did he get these roots, but the kids, as far as when it comes to culinary stuff, he is a chef when it comes to cooking now. So it's like, maybe he got, maybe someday I'll give Dad credit for that. The tomato harvest, lots of varieties. I love the colors, the flavors of, you name it. These are generally slicers. I've cooked these down for 2-3 days sometimes to make sauces, but lots of good fun. So I mentioned, again, now we're in August. Look at the growth on this pumpkin in the matter of 2 weeks. These are those Dill's Atlantic Giants. They're putting on lots of weight. I actually had to expand my garden because of these varieties. I tried to grow in my main garden. Tilled a bunch of lawn one fall. My wife didn't notice till spring, so anyway. So I mentioned the culinary side. 1 year we sold the dinner as for a fundraiser. I actually designed some of the garden for recognize. I think I grew cabbage in this area, so I could harvest early because we're in August now. But basically designed the garden so it'd be kind of a nice ambiance around the table. I like reading the descriptions of what I made. Everything was from the garden, but I'm not going to show you all 7 courses, but like a golden gazpacho that was obviously using the heirloom tomatoes. If you've never grown shishito peppers, start today. That was the one pepper variety I sent back with my daughter. You can harvest them every 2-3 days, blister them. You don't have to put a miso glaze on, just olive oil and sea salt. This also had a beet Napoleon and then a zucchini salmon roll with a nasturtium. So, and then I love the caprese salad, the design of the balsamic glaze and the pesto, obviously a basil pesto. And then while there was company there, the kids got to have some fun in the garden after a sparkling grape juice. More on the tomato harvest. This is the time of year when I say, to heck with the weeds, it's harvest time. You can't keep up anymore. Even not only do you see the color of beans sometimes, but also the pods. this variety here, but also, again, my favorite variety of tomatoes, Kellogg's Breakfast. Just an absolute amazing slicer. If you haven't grown that, get some of those and grow those. More of the tomato harvest. Clay's still happy in that picture, but again, Dad has to get in there once in a while too. Peaches grow in South Dakota. Well, I know Diane's green. I can't remember this variety, but there have been good years. Quick little story. I don't know if you know, last Tuesday night, I think it was, we had a frost in this area. Any of you experienced that? Yeah, I set the alarm for 3:30 in the morning, had the hose set up, sprinkler set up, go outside at 3:30, turn the hose on, don't hear. It's like, oh, hose is already froze up. Well, yeah, so I waited 20 minutes in shorts and a t-shirt in that weather for the water to get going. Anyway, I texted my wife, I said, hey, if you hear something outside, well, I was outside for a half hour and she heard stuff and she was sleeping with a mat when I came in. Anyway, but the peaches, a week later, I looked last night, they're about pea size and they're still green. So hoping for a good crop of peaches this year. Some of the onion harvest. Here's the sweets over here. One of the ways I store my onions now, these actually I didn't cure, but now I cure them in the shade out of the sun, but in the dry weather for about a week, and then use 3 strands of twine to basically hang them. A great way, I've kept onions till this time of year down. I mean, our basement is 65 degrees, but just keeping them out of the light. And again, sweet onions, use those as fast as you can, store them in the fridge. There's lots of different ways to store them, but use those up and then store the dry onions, or excuse me, the keeper onions like yellow Parma, red Weathersfield. Grow lots of different, probably 30, 40 varieties of peppers. These are some New Mex Big Jims. If you see like the Hatch Chili Festivals, this is a lot of what I do with those. Roast those and then pill them and freeze them. Ahi Charpita, it's a pepper out of Peru. It's supposed to be the $1 million pepper. My son wanted me to grow them because they're worth a lot of money. Well, they aren't, but they're super hot, but I think they might be. I don't know for sure. But and then here you can see, this is another variety of bean. I wish I could show you the video on this, but so this is Potawatomi. It's now from the Great Lakes region, a tribe up there, but a fairly fast growth. These, well, obviously I'm harvesting them in August, so well ahead of the frost date, grows really well. Like when that pan's sitting there in the sun, I think it's part of the seed dispersal mechanism, but those pods, if they're dry and sunny, they're flinging seeds. So I actually have to watch them kind of so they're not popping seeds all over the yard. But a pretty variety and a really nice one to add to soups. The August 2020 harvest. Here's another reason I like Kellogg's Breakfast. I harvest tomatoes about every 3-4 days. This is off of one plant, one picking. 14 pounds, 1 ounce that day. So yeah, of course we're talking big indeterminate plants. Go ahead.
How big is your garden? How many acres?
It's like 25, all rolled into about I live on a half acre out of Riverside Acres. And so that's why I went vertical and lots of raised beds.
This is like a half an acre or?
Well, yeah, but we have way too much, turf grass yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so yeah. It's slow. Now because I don't till anymore, I don't bring the tiller out. So now secret, I need to tell you this is really important. So what I'm starting to do now is I'm laying mulch out, so it's killing I keep extending via mulch. So this year I started like 150 dahlias from seeds. So it's going to be pretty, but it's going to be more garden space. So anyway, just some of these are ancho chilies growing. Okay, we are getting close because we're in September now. Yeah, some of the more different flavors of Mo River Magma. Clay got into that because we can make money selling this. This is too much of a hobby. These are good gifts, but more onion harvest, more peppers. One of the things I didn't talk about too much here was some of the varieties of peppers. I can't remember the yellow one offhand, but 2 varieties of red peppers. If you like thick-walled roasted red peppers, Leysa, Leysa, absolutely amazing as far as sweetness, productivity. You'll pull 10, 12 peppers off a plant, but when you char those up, it is one of the sweetest. And then I make actually with these, it's a Hungarian dish it's Ajvar, Ajvar. basically we're cooking garlic and peppers down for several hours till it's way thicker than the consistency of ketchup, and I pressure can that. It's an absolutely neat treat.
Can you say the name of that pepper?
Yeah, it's Leysa, Leysa. Another one that's very similar to that, because I grow both varieties that I use for that. It's basically an Ivarski, Ajvarski. So I grow those two varieties strictly, almost specifically for that reason, to make that Ivar. It's a great condiment to add. So actually, I'm making it to the end here, almost by the top of the hour. So one of the things I want to share, I mentioned some of the people and some of the things, gardening for me, obviously, my folks, had it. I think back to Aunt Leona Roman and Grandma Stastney growing the garden. I mean, it's a matter, for a lot of folks, it was a matter of food source, putting that root cellar up. And, I look back to what you see here, which is kind of neat. My dad, he kept it hanging in his garage. Both my folks have passed on now, but it's an old, he picked corn by hand behind a team of mules off a buckboard, but that's the husking, the corn picking husking glove that, he used into the 1950s. And then my mother is they're both very buried with a rosary from Job's Tears that I actually told my mother, I said, Mom, it was the first year trying to grow Job's Tears. I said, I'm going to grow you a rosary. And, before she passed on, she got to hold some of the beads, but I eventually made her a rosary that she's buried without those Job's Tears. But I've made necklaces, bracelets out of those types of things. So, when I think about gardening, come back to that quote I started with, one of the things I think about, gardening is it does not only allows you to experience, allows you to grow, pick up those stories of where some of these varieties, different varieties of what you're growing come from. Meeting people from Sweden, I collected some beans from a guy down in Alabama. We just met on the internet and we're trading bean seeds. I said, well, I want heirloom varieties. Well, I got a variety that a old tire salesman gave my dad 30 years ago. It's called, he called it Dobbins beans. And, it's neat to have, for me, it's neat to have those heirlooms besides the chives from my aunt or the irises from my grandmother-in-law. But, it also teaches us, that, right now we're at the start again. For some of you, mine started in October. For some, tonight, I was watering just before I came here, and I'll be planting hard tonight. But it does teach you those things about life and how things can go. It was a lot of fun putting this together because looking back at the kids and realizing, and I got only to 2020, if you want to see more. So any questions, I'll pop,
What are you using for moisture in the garden?
Did I say I lived on Riverside Acres, don't ever want to move because Sandpoint,
Standpoint?
yeah. I'll show you just, I didn't capture all these pictures, but some of that. I like looking at the insects. There's a lot of fun things in the garden, obviously. Even a big thing for me because I used to grow a lot of pumpkins, having chickens, and they really clean up a lot of the insect pests that are out there. It's time. So anyway, that's kind of the show. I did pull up this presentation. I'll pop it if you want to see some of the pumpkins really quick. I haven't shown this for years, but we actually lived in Pierre for a long time. So this is growing giant pumpkins in Pierre. But yeah, some of the different varieties that we had there. Yeah, this was pre-kids. So we'd use the dogs and me. I hate to go to pumpkin weigh-ins because I didn't have any kids to take to me. But our front yard at Halloween, this is 2002. It was as popular as the governor's mansion because people would say that I gotta get to their house. I always had a puking pumpkin, if you eat your candy. But one year we literally ran out of candy and I was calling my wife. I was like, Gentina, hurry home. We need more candy, et cetera, et cetera. I had gone through fruit snacks, all the change in the house. When I gave the young lady a can of tuna, she started crying. This was one of my favorite displays. I had this pumpkin rot because I think a vole or something got underneath it. So I did it, the great pumpkin will rise again, but then obviously the Charlie Brown theme. So, yeah. And when I got a job in Yankton, I said, And they said, would you start in October? I said, how about November 1? Because our house was selling and I wanted to do one last pumpkin display. Yeah, and then of course the kids doing the carving, et cetera. And, yeah, and then, yeah, this is starting some of the seeds. Yeah, and if, one other tip I'll say about just squashes, cucumbers, anything cucumbers, I know greenhouse I want to sell. A lot of these things are super easy to start at home. But if you are buying squash or zucchini, because I've started a lot of big pumpkins, I want to get a jump on it, give it as much time as I could, walls of water, lots of moisture, lots of dead fish buried under them. But once they're at a dicot stage, if they're starting to get a third leaf, get that stuff from the ground because it will not do well. So anyway, that's it.
What was the variety of pepper that you ground into chili?
So that's a habanada. Yeah, I used to say it's habanada. Thank you. Yeah, so that's it. You can turn up the lights and we can talk now if you want.
Thank you.
How do you get, when you leave your parsnips and leeks out that long, how do you get them out of the ground?
Well, so, I mean, like the leeks especially, I know we're supposed to leave the leaves, but I actually have a huge pile of compost in the garden. But I'll watch the weather. If I see it's gonna start dropping below 25, I'm just taking cottonwood leaves or whatever leaves we have and just covering them with leaves, and they keep really, you're holding that temperature from ground.
Yeah, I've had trouble getting them out of the ground when I.
Yeah, so I basically do, and then I watch, if we start, because they're mulched in, if the temperature is gonna go down below 20, then I'm pulling. So it just depends, that's why you saw some harvested in November, some December, as late as December 19. So, yeah.
An axe works too.
So this.